Many years ago, Sri M.P. Pandit suggested that a devotee write an article about the importance of precise bookkeeping and accounting while engaged in service. There was a prevailing sentiment that such mental ideas were antithetical to the kind of absolute devotion and surrender that put everything in the hands of the mother, and which thereby assumed that everything would work out, money would come as needed, and everything would be properly handled. The conscious participation in the evolutionary process, which Sri Aurobindo has described as speeding up that process, occurs once the self-reflective mental powers are activated. The development of any new power of consciousness in the manifestation does not, thereby, invalidate, inactivate, or overturn the need and use of the earlier terms that have evolved. The mental power did not do away with the vital power. The vital power did not do away with the physical power. Rather, each one was founded on the base of the preceding terms and modified the interaction accordingly. As a spiritual seeker begins to grapple with the difficulties of the external nature, particularly in any attempt to transform rather than suppress that nature, he faces a complex mix of drives, emotions, forces, ideas, and perceptions that threaten his ability to effectuate true change. Having a clear sense of the interplay of all these forces, where and how they arise, and how to untie the various knots that permit them to continue unchanged, is an important aid in undertaking the effort of change. This is where the use of the mental power with its ability to separate, classify, and organize can be helpful. This is not a call to intellectualize the approach to the nature, but an approach directed by the soul's aspiration that takes into account the usefulness of the mental power as part of the process. Dr. Dalal observes, self-understanding is the first step. As the mother remarks, first learn to know yourself perfectly and then to control yourself perfectly. And to perfect oneself, one must first become conscious of oneself. The distinct character of man, states Sri Aurobindo, is that he is a mental being. Dr. Dalal extrapolates, therefore, man naturally starts with a mental understanding of himself. A mental self-understanding lies in being able to distinguish intellectually the many different and complex parts of one's being. This calls for a very long training and a long discipline of study and observation, according to the mother, to identify the respective sources of one's thoughts, feelings, actions, and moods. This means being able to give a label to different parts of our makeup which constitute the many selves of our being. To many people, label and labeling have a somewhat pejorative meaning, being associated with a mere mental or intellectual process, devoid of a true understanding of the thing being labeled, and often acting as an obstacle to a true understanding. However, a mental understanding is not necessarily an obstacle. On the contrary, it can be a great aid and a step towards deeper understanding. To shun all mental or intellectual understanding as mere labeling is to ignore the fact, stated above, that the distinct character of the human being is that of a mental being, and it is but natural for one to start with a mental understanding and gradually develop a deeper understanding. It is only rare individuals who have a deep self-understanding so as to be able to distinguish the different inner movements of their many selves without having first learnt to label them mentally. The mother indicated to the children of the ashram school, quote, If nobody ever taught you what the psychic or the vital is, you cannot have any notion of the thing. You may say, "Today I feel good. Yesterday I did not." Till I was 24, I knew nothing about all these things, and yet I could distinguish very well these movements. I did not use these words because no one had taught them to me, and I had never read anything. But I felt very clearly the difference at different moments and in what state of consciousness I was. Mother continues, "But you who are here, after all that you have heard, and all that you have read, and all that I have taught you, you should be conversant with all the movements within you, and be able to fix a little label. This is this, that is this other." End quote. Reference, Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, Our Many Selves, Practical Yogic Psychology, Preface, pages Roman 10 to Roman 12.